All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and the Commanders have officially released slot cornerback / safety Bobby McCain after a couple of years of being with the Commanders. That saves us $4.42 million worth of cap space. That's pretty big. Doesn't sound like a lot, but we're going to talk about why that could actually end up meaning a lot for this team. First of all, does that mean a Kamren Curl extension is coming soon? Was that just the last little bit of money that they needed per year to be able to give him the extension that he wants? Also, what does this mean as far as replacing Bobby McCain? Y'all already know. I don't think Bobby McCain is a great player, but I also feel like he was getting a lot of blame that wasn't necessarily his fault. So when you lose a Bobby McCain, you do technically have somewhat of a hole on the team. So I want to take a look at a lot of the options that we may look at as far as the draft, especially a Devon Witherspoon, who's very versatile. Are we far more likely to get him in the first round now after releasing the Bobby McCain? I also want to take a look at a lot of the top free agent cornerbacks that will be available in this upcoming free agency starting mid-March. And then also, does this mean they just simply believe in their young DB talent? So we're going to look at all of the DBs that we have now currently on roster to see if we have our Bobby McCain replacement there, and they may not prioritize adding another corner or safety to this team. I mean, of course, you're going to add some of those guys every offseason, draft and or free agency, but do they believe in the young talent that's already here enough to where they're not going to spend a top draft pick on one or go and get one of the top free agents to fill the void? So we got to dive into everything involving this Bobby McCain situation, including a little bit of background history on Bobby McCain and what he did for the Commanders while he was here and all of that type of stuff. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay on the lookout for all of the content. I will be doing film sessions soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Just came out with my mock draft, my Eric Bieniemy dream mock draft, where he gets his Travis Kelce, he gets his top O-line, and he can pretty much try to replicate what he did with the Chiefs with the Commanders moving forward. So make sure you check that out as well, and stay tuned for all of the content because I'm doing a whole video on ownership and things like that, all of the recent updates that came out just today. So stay tuned for everything, man, and I can't wait to get this content out to y'all. I have so many video ideas, so excited. Film, draft, free agency, all of it. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so everything spiraled out of control when Adam Schefter tweeted out of nowhere, 1:53 p.m. I'm recording this at 2:08 p.m. The Commanders are releasing starting slot cornerback safety Bobby McCain per source. Commanders have young talent in the secondary. McCain was the odd man out, and the team will save $4.42 million against the cap. And that doesn't necessarily sound like a lot, but it could hold a lot of weight. But before we get there, first of all, with them cutting Bobby McCain, it also shows that they do trust Darrick Forrest at safety. They feel like they have something in a Kamren Curl and Darrick Forrest safety combo. Of course, I would like to add a third guy. Maybe Percy Butler could be that third guy. Maybe they bring in a third guy. Safety-wise, we're not just talking corner, we're talking safety purely right now. Again, we're going to dive into the Commanders roster at the end after we talk draft, after we talk free agency, all of that type of stuff. But it looks like at the very least as of right now, they believe in Darrick Forrest and Kamren Curl. How long term? We'll see when we get to the Kamren Curl part of this. But yeah, I mean, they just have so many safeties on roster, and if any of them can give you what Bobby McCain is giving you and save you $4.42 million at the same time, why not? And now let's get to the Kamren Curl part of this, because that extra $4.42 million again doesn't sound like a lot, but is that the little bit that they need per year to satisfy what Kamren Curl wants on a long-term deal? Like, say for example, and this is coming from no information, no reports, but say Kamren Curl wants like $12 million a year in his next deal. If we only have enough cap space to give him say $8 million per year, releasing Bobby McCain gives you that extra $4, and now you can get that deal done. So there's no reports on this. This is just me just purely speculating on the whole situation and brainstorming. I'm just saying, don't be surprised if a Kamren Curl deal long term gets done soon. First of all, John Kam talked about it being one of the Commanders' priorities this offseason in his podcast, I believe yesterday or a couple of days ago or something like that. He just talked about, and I felt like that was relatively breaking news that a lot of people weren't talking about, which was kind of strange strange to me that Kamren Curl being extended is a priority this offseason. He's a 2024 free agent. This season, he still has one more year. He is on the Commanders for at least the 2023 season. So the fact that they want to jump ahead of this and get him signed long-term and extended a year before his contract even ends, technically a year and some days and a couple of weeks, because the new 2023 league year hasn't even started. We're still technically in 2022, according to NFL records. So that's just really interesting in itself. I felt like that was breaking news, that the fact that the Commanders do want to get Kamren Curl signed long-term, and they want to do it this offseason, not the next one. And again, that extra little bit of $4.42 million that you saved this year alone could be that little extra bump to that Kamren Curl long-term contract that you may be able to keep him long-term. But I still do feel like that leaves a hole on the team that needs to be filled either through safety or cornerback. And you can address that in free agency, the draft, or maybe one of these younger guys already on the roster stepping up. But again, we'll get there. And I like Bobby McCain. Again, I felt like he received a lot more blame than he deserved. A lot of people were blaming him for stuff that was not his fault. I mean, you could see when William Jackson got released, a lot of the communication issues ended. And then no matter who was on the field, if Kamren Curl was not out there, we had miscommunication issues just off of that. And so I just felt like it was kind of unfair for Bobby McCain to get as much blame as he deserved. But yeah, if you could cut Bobby McCain for $4.42 million, go ahead. You know what I'm saying? Again, I feel like he received a lot more blame than it was his fault, but Bobby McCain cutting him, saving you almost $5 million is definitely worth it. So I agree with the move. I just want to let people know that it wasn't all his fault. You got Bobby McCain, Darrick Forrest, everybody out there. But if Kamren Curl's hurt, Darrick Forrest doesn't even look like the same player. And that's not necessarily Bobby McCain's fault. That's more so Darrick Forrest's fault. But it's also just shows why we need to extend Kamren Curl even more. Now, what's really interesting to me, the first thing I thought of when I saw this, I was like, okay, so if the Commanders are actually in the office, because I see other teams releasing players and things like that, but if the Commanders are actually in office, I just assumed they were on vacation and they weren't doing anything like this. No roster moves, no personnel decisions. If they are actually in office and looking at the roster and adjusting things, releasing guys, planning on extending guys, signing guys and things like that, if they're actually pretty active, I just assumed they weren't active. Why is Bobby McCain your first release? Why is Carson Wentz still on this roster? Cutting him, who's obviously not going to play for you next year, would save you around $26 million worth of cap space, way more than the almost $5 million that Bobby McCain gives you from getting cut. Why was he not the first one? And even if he wasn't the first one, why was it not a package deal of Bobby McCain, you're gone, oh yeah, Carson Wentz, we all know it, you're gone as well? Like, what is taking so long for Carson Wentz to get released? Am I the only one that thought that immediately after seeing Bobby McCain was released? I just assumed Carson Wentz wasn't released yet, because again, I just thought guys weren't in the office. Maybe Ron Rivera was somewhere with his family in California. Everybody's just chilling right now, preparing for the combine. But no, they're clearly in office. They're clearly evaluating this roster. What is taking so long for Carson Wentz to get cut? What are we waiting for? But John Kam tweeted, and you know John Kam is very close to the organization, so what he says is pretty much what's going to happen. He doesn't try to be first. He doesn't try to speculate on rumors and things like that. He goes straight from the source and what he's heard directly from Commanders personnel like Rivera, Martin Mayhew, and guys like that. He tweeted, key leader, as in Bobby McCain, but Washington will look to upgrade the cornerback position for his slot duties and also look to add another hybrid safety who can back up Kamren Curl and play in 3 safety sets. So that's really interesting, because it sounds like they want to replace Bobby McCain with 2 players maybe instead of just 1. They want to upgrade the slot position and have another safety out there that can play alongside Kamren Curl and Darrick Forrest at the same time on the field. Again, we may already have that on the roster in a few guys, but apparently the Commanders want to at the very least do their due diligence and look towards upgrading both of those positions, not just one, both of them, slot corner and safety, potentially in free agency or the draft. But before we dive into all of that, just a brief history on Bobby McCain. 29 years old, former 5th round pick by the Dolphins in 2015. He was entering the final year of his 4-year, $2.580 million rookie contract when the Dolphins signed him to a 4-year extension worth $27 million, $13 million guaranteed. Then McCain was set to make base salaries of $6.375 million and $6.975 million over the final 2 years of his deal when the Dolphins released him. He signed a 1-year deal with Washington for the 2021 NFL season, then signed a 2-year, $11 million deal with the Commanders back in March of 2022. And then in 2022, Bobby McCain appeared in all 17 games. And man, availability goes very underrated in this Commander fan base, man. Somebody that can play all 17 games is pretty big to me. Of course, we would prefer if Bobby McCain were better. I'm not saying Bobby McCain was a great player, but I just do feel like a lot of people are hating on him a little bit too much. But he played in all 17 games, recorded 76 tackles, 5 pass breakups, and 1 forced fumble. Not a terrible season. Not a great season again either, but not a terrible season. Nowhere near as bad as a lot of people try to act like it is. Now, of course, I feel like this just means that they have the utmost trust in Percy Butler, probably, because he's a guy that we could probably say would be the next Bobby McCain, but way better, way faster, way quicker, way more athletic, way more explosive. He can play slot corner, he can play free safety, he can play either safety position that you want him to. So ideally, he's your immediate replacement for Bobby McCain for both positions. But if the Commanders do want to look towards the draft, I would say that Devon Witherspoon is the #1 answer for potentially replacing a guy like that. I feel like you could argue he's the best slot corner in the draft, so at the very least you're getting that. But I feel like he's versatile enough to play outside. Kendall Fuller, we don't necessarily know about him long term, so he could be a guy that no matter what injury you have in the cornerback group, Devon Witherspoon can step in and start right there. If Benjamin St-Juste is hurt and we don't have any other good outside starting quarter other than Kendall Fuller, Devon Witherspoon could take Benjamin St-Juste's spot, and then you probably move Danny Johnson or Percy Butler into the slot corner position. Devon Witherspoon can play anywhere you need him to. This man is great against man. He plays very well against zone. His ball skills are arguably the best in the draft class. He has one of those alpha mentalities that you just love, that can be like the spirit of your defense, talking the most trash, all of that. He loves to deliver a great hit. He's a great tackler at the cornerback position, which is something we lack. Kendall Fuller misses tackles. Benjamin St-Juste misses tackles even as long as he is, and he's just not very aggressive against the run. Devon Witherspoon is not afraid of any responsibility for a corner. Me personally, if I'm looking for a pure outside man corner, Christian Gonzales is my favorite in this draft class. But if you're talking about slot corner, outside corner, maybe even able to play some safety, maybe some cover 3 and things like that, wherever you need somebody to fill in a spot, if you're looking for a guy like that, Devon Witherspoon is your guy. But you would have to get either of those guys, Christian Gonzales or Devon Witherspoon, in the first round. And I'm not even sure if you could trade back from 16 and still get those guys. They may not even be there at 16. Literally, the only weakness to Devon Witherspoon, honestly, is his lack of strength. So bigger receivers kind of beat up on him a little bit. But other than that, he has everything else you can want in a starting slot corner, outside corner, whatever you need, zone, man coverage, whatever. So if you really believe in Danny Johnson or Percy Butler to step up big time in the slot, then you could probably go Christian Gonzales as your pure outside man cover corner, and then you can have 2 pure outside corners in Benjamin St-Juste, Christian Gonzales. You work Kendall Fuller, Percy Butler, and Danny Johnson around that. But if you prefer to upgrade exactly what you lost in Bobby McCain as far as slot goes, and then you believe in Percy Butler as more of a safety, and then you like Benjamin St-Juste and Kendall Fuller as your outside corners, Devon Witherspoon is your dream draft pick this upcoming draft. There's other corners out there, but it's really only worthy talking about those 2 in this certain situation, which then takes me to our free agent options for replacing Bobby McCain. And as of right now, the Commanders have top 15 cap space, because we had almost $8 million before this Bobby McCain thing, and then now after gaining an additional $4.45 million, and then we're going to gain like another 26 once we finally release Carson Wentz. So you could basically say, after the Bobby McCain situation is done, after he's fully released, after we finally release Carson Wentz, I still don't know it's taking so long, we will have top 5 cap space in the NFL. And that's great news for somebody like Eric Bieniemy. You're bringing him in. Now granted, we are releasing a quarterback, which is technically getting replaced by Sam Howell, and then you're releasing a DB, which is not on Eric Bieniemy's side of the ball. But I think Eric Bieniemy should have a lot of say-so in what we do in free agency, this upcoming free agency coming up in just a couple of weeks. I mean, we have the combine starting this week, and then free agency is a couple of weeks after that. It's time to get active, man. And so, again, having top 5 cap space, I think we should focus more on offense. But of course, when you make a move like this, and we're talking about releasing Bobby McCain, you may want to take a look at some of the free agents that are going to be out there as far as cornerbacks go, and maybe even some safeties. But looking at cornerbacks, most importantly, you have Marcus Peters, you have Bradley Roby, you have James Bradbury, and pull him in the Super Bowl. You have Jonathan Jones, Anthony Brown, Emmanuel Mosley, Cameron Sutton, Troy Hill, Anthony Averett, Patrick Peterson is still out there doing it, man. Golly, but he's a free agent as well. Eli Apple, as funny as that would be. Kyle Fuller, Byron Murphy, Rocky Sin, Trey Flowers, Greedy Williams, all of that talent coming out of the draft. Logan Ryan, our boy Fabian Moreau, Sidney Jones. I mean, all of that talent he had coming out of the draft. Jason Verrett. There's so many names here if you want to go corner. And again, you're kind of open with the situation that we have to get whatever corner you want. I mean, of course, Bobby McCain was technically a slot corner and safety. But again, for reasons I've already stated, as far as talking about Christian Gonzales, we have enough versatility in our DB group to where if you want to address outside corner in free agency or the draft, you have guys that can step up and play slot for you. But technically, you release Bobby McCain, you have a hole in your slot cornerback group. But again, we have guys that can move there. Technically, Benjamin St-Juste was supposed to play slot. I prefer him outside anyway, but we have options. So you can go anywhere DB-wise. You can go safety, slot corner, outside corner, whatever you want to do. We are in the market for that guy to fill in what we lost in Bobby McCain, because again, we're going to take a look at the roster soon. Somebody can step up and play slot if you want them to. Somebody can step up and play outside corner if you want them to. Somebody that we already have on roster can step up and play safety for you. So basically go best player available at that point, whether it's corner, outside, slot, safety, whatever. So this begs the question, does this mean that Danny Johnson or Percy Butler is technically your starting slot corner, or the guy that's going to get the majority of snaps at that spot? Because remember, we run a lot of 3 safety sets anyway, so it's not like we have a slot corner out there all of the time anyway. So a slot corner is not the most necessary thing. And again, Devon Witherspoon is so valuable because he can play outside as well. It's not like you're only drafting a pure slot corner. That's why it still makes sense. But for our defense, a slot corner isn't a huge need. It's a need, but it's not a huge one. As long as Kamren Curl, Darrick Forrest, and whoever our third safety is going to be, probably Percy Butler, are healthy, slot corner isn't a huge need, but somebody needs to be ready to step up when we need one out there. And so right now, Danny Johnson, towards the end of last season, I don't know what it is. In the preseason, he's awful. But in the regular season, he steps up big time, especially in the second half of seasons at slot corner. So right now, he's your leading slot corner. But again, Percy Butler is the guy with all of the potential. If you had to look at all of the talent in our DB group and argue about who has the highest ceiling, it's between Darrick Forrest and Percy Butler, just off of pure athleticism, explosion, speed, quickness, agility, and things like that. Who are the freakiest athletes in our DB group is Percy Butler and Darrick Forrest. So right now, again, Danny Johnson technically is our starting slot corner, especially with Bobby McCain gone, and then especially with how well Danny Johnson played when we needed him most the second half of this past season. But Percy Butler is definitely that guy that's ready to step up big time. And if you need him to play slot corner, if you need him to be that third safety on the field, he can do all of those, and I feel like eventually very well. And him, along with a lot of young talent that we threw out there in that last game against the Cowboys, looked very promising. Khaleke Hudson at linebacker, Chris Paul at left guard. We threw out a lot of young talent against the Cowboys that final game of the season, and a lot of them showed promise, and Percy Butler was definitely one of the headliners of the young guys that showed a lot of promise. But I mean, of course, Jeremy Reeves is still there as a safety backup type of guy. He's a dominant special teams player. He made the Pro Bowl. He received the most Pro Bowl votes out of all special teams players. He even made all pro at it. So even though he's an unrestricted free agent, we need to sign him long term, but he's not necessarily our answer to replace Bobby McCain. But I just wanted to throw his name out there because he does matter. We still have Christian Holmes, who's learning. You know, he's getting used to things. Yeah, you technically have Tariq Castro-Fields if he's technically on roster. You have Rashad Wildgoose hanging around. And of course, Troy Apke lurking around somewhere on the back end of our roster, on the 90-man roster. Not the 53, but when it's 90, Troy Apke's there. So I feel like the most realistic answer is that they believe in Percy Butler to step up big time, and then they trust Danny Johnson to hold it down until Percy Butler is fully ready to like completely take over. I do feel like getting Devon Witherspoon in the draft will be a home run hit. Christian Gonzales, or if you want to go tackle, whatever you want to do in the first round, Devon Witherspoon should definitely be in strong consideration. The biggest problem with that is I don't think he's going to make it to the 16th overall pick, especially after he shows what he can do in this combine, and people go back and look at his tape. It's going to be ridiculous. His draft stock is going to skyrocket. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the first corner taken between him and Christian Gonzales. Love you, Kelee RIngo, but you may not even be one of the first 5 cornerbacks taken. Your floor is just just too low. Your ceiling is crazy high, but Devon Witherspoon and Christian Gonzales both come with crazy floors, and literally their only weakness is a strength. And you can get that. Just get them into an NFL workout program. They'll be straight. They should be potential lockdown corners for whatever teams they go to. And then free agency wise, we have the money, but I just don't see with this transition in ownership and the history of Ron Rivera being cheap and going for the lower tier guys anyway, second tier, third tier anyway. I don't really see us going out there and spending big in free agency for that. And again, Eric Bieniemy being your new home run hire, he's an offensive coordinator. He's on the offensive side of the ball. So if anything, we may be a little bit more aggressive as far as acquiring talent on the offensive side of the ball than the defensive, especially if you look at the stats. You're like, our offense was 27th in a lot of categories, bottom tier in the NFL. Our defense was top 5, at the very least top 10 in a lot of categories. So at the very least, for that reason alone, they're going to look at this free agency coming up and be like, well, the offense needs the most help. And then again, on top of that, your home run hire that has all of the fans rallying behind the Commanders again. A lot of the guys who switched their Commanders jerseys for Ravens jerseys or whatever other team jerseys are coming back because of Eric Bieniemy. So there's no reason why he shouldn't have at least a big say-so in where our free agency money goes this upcoming offseason. I mean, on top of that, I also feel like we're going to spend a lot of our money trying to keep Daron Payne long-term, or at the very least franchise tagging him, paying Kamren Curl long-term like we talked about earlier. So I don't even think we're just going to have a lot of money to spend on defense as far as players that are not on the Commanders that we will be bringing in from outside teams, because on one hand, Eric Bieniemy in the offense needs the most improvement, and then on the other hand, we're going to spend a lot of money trying to retain players that are already on the team. I mean, Cole Holcomb is an unrestricted free agent, and as of right now, we just have Jamin Davis, Dejon Harris, and David Mayo as our only 3 linebackers on our roster, and that's it. Now, granted, Khaleke Hudson is a restricted free agent, so it'll be easy to bring him back, but still, you're gonna have to find a way to pay Cole Holcomb potentially long term, or you're gonna have to go linebacker very early in this draft, and I don't feel like any linebacker in this draft is worthy of a first round pick, in my opinion. At the earliest second, maybe Trenton Simpson if you like him that much, who knows. But either way, I don't see us spending big time money on outside free agents to bring them from another team to the Commanders this free agency, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And as always, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Let me know how you feel about this whole Bobby McCain situation. Do you love Devon Witherspoon? Do you feel like we should replace Bobby McCain in the draft, free agency, or with one of the young talents that we already currently have on roster? How are you on Danny Johnson? How are you on Percy Butler? This overall DB group that we currently have, all of that. So let me know about all of that in the comment section. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.